Welcome to Optimal Game State. Last time, we had a look at some of the solo or co-op rules for the new edition of Kill Team. This week, I'm going to build on that. I've set out two goals for myself when it comes to Kill Team. The first is to make a Space Marine 2 style game, where I've got 3 Ultramarines facing off against a horde of Tyranids. The second is to use the Gaunt's Ghost box that I've got floating around here, paint it up and have them as an Imperial Guard team facing off against their classic enemy of the Blood Pact, who I'll grab some blooded models for. So I've got two solid hobby ideas to work on. First, though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tamper with the solo play rules. Now, on one hand, this is the height of arrogance. A designer spent time working on this solo play variant, and they're probably much better at their job than I would be. On the other hand, this isn't the first time there's been a solo play version of a game, and we can learn from the lessons of other games to try and improve the experience we have for Kill Team. Now, having planned out some of the changes that I'm going to talk about in this video, I can already see why the designers wouldn't want to do it. Essentially, every change we make takes us one step further away from playing a normal game of Kill Team. The two main goals I have for this exercise are to speed up the game for the players and to remove as many points where the players have to make decisions for the enemies. We want our players focused on the strategy of their own side. We don't want them trying to play two games simultaneously, which honestly I think is a real flaw of the current version of these solo play rules. For quick play games, having NPO kill team selection pretty vague is really good. As you know, we've got our own collections to play from, and you're able to pick from your own collection and then assign the profiles that seem right to that. As Darcy pointed out in her recent video, this also massively increases the replayability, as you can keep doing the same scenario again and again with a different selection of profiles, and it's going to play different every time, so you're going to get a good variety in there. That said, there are some merits to planning out a battle, in which case we can have the profiles picked out ahead of time, but let the players work out exactly what from their own collection is going to make sense for that. So here I've added some Tyrannid models to match the profiles, but you could just as easily change those out to be all orcs or chaos cultists and demons or, whatever. This would mean I could play out this battle, tell you how I did, and then you could play it out and see if you could do better than me. I'm a real big fan of this challenge style of solo play battles, so it's definitely a format that appeals to me. We have similar considerations when it comes to deployment. So the 3 mission packs we have in the core book just say that MPOs are set up with concealed order wholly within the MPO's drop zone and spread out in cover. So yeah, it's pretty vague. That said, it is pretty hard to predetermine deployment if you don't also specify the terrain, which again isn't something we really want to do because everyone will have slightly different terrain. It could be something that could be improved though. During normal deployment, you do split your kill team into 3 groups, and then both sides go back and forth doing that. This hasn't been mentioned really in the solo play rules, and putting players into a position where they have to try outthink themselves in deployment is a bit weird. So instead, what we can try to do is we can try to randomize it. So for deployment, we're going to randomly split the MPOs into 3 groups, or if there is something else that makes narrative sense, go with that. We're going to divide the MPO deployment group into roughly equal parts, maybe using map squares or sections just to make sense. So here I've tried to split the 22 inches into 6, which doesn't really work, but it is a rough idea. Then we can use a dice to randomly assign the 3 groups out, ignoring any duplications. This would mean that the player's side of the game is actually closer to a normal game of Kill Team than would be otherwise, and it still gives them something to react to. Crucially though, it removes that awkward position of having to try outthink yourself. Obviously all MPOs should be deployed in cover where possible and should be facing the opposite deployment zone. You'll still have some decisions to make around exact positions, but hopefully this will simplify it. The solo play pack does also suggest taking equipment for the MPOs from the generic equipment selection. I would definitely skip that. I don't want to have to spend my time thinking about how the MPO team can best use equipment. So if there isn't a narrative reason to have it, just skip it. Obviously, our heroes should be taking equipment, but if it is something, it's probably something you could leave out for brand new players first game, or maybe pre-pick their equipment and then give them access to it a few turns in when they need a little bit of help. For initiative, the suggestion is to roll 1 dice for the MPOs and 1 dice for the other side. So that's whether it's solo or co-op, you're only going to roll 1 dice. And the MPO side will always take the initiative if you can. Now, you can fast roll this, which is where you roll both dice at the same time, making sure you know which color is which. So you've got like a red and a white dice, and you know you're always white and they're always red. Alternatively, what we could do here is we could just remove the MPO roll, have their value always be 3. So rather than rolling a dice for them, we're just going to assume they always roll 3 all the time. It's a pretty minor thing, but it is 1 less dice to roll. Now, the initiative system is something that I've heard a lot of people talking about, especially in relation to solo play, or in relation to this version of it at least. But when they do, it's actually around the activation process rather than the actual initiative roll. Who goes first isn't really what we're talking about. The alternating activation system is my preferred approach for skirmish war games, but many of the solo games actually use variations on it, with the MPOs acting in blocks. For example, with Stargrave, you activate your captain and up to 3 nearby troops, then all the enemies activate, and then you get to activate the remainder of your team. Some games, like the board game version of Darktide, have cards for each enemy, and you randomly select cards to work out which character is going next. You can do similar systems with tokens or dice drawn from a bag, like you see with Bolt Action or the Samurai game Test of Honor. Indeed, Kill Team does have something along lines, because it does have a group activation on some of the operatives. So you can hear that the Chaos Devotee has a group activation special, which means they are going to be activating in groups. They're going to be activating 2 at a time. Now, the reason people are talking about these alternating activation systems, or different versions of it, is because the enemy activations are actually quite predictable. You always know who is going to activate next and what they're going to do, because you're working off a script and you're the one who'll be taking those actions. Against another player, you can occasionally get caught by surprise as they exploit an opening you didn't notice. The irony here, of course, is that any random activation system will typically result in a less effective AI. If there is a obvious best action, but only a 1 in 3 chance that the AI is going to take that action, then you've just made the game a little bit easier for yourself, even if it is a little bit more predictable and a little bit more random. Now, I don't necessarily have a solution for this. As I said, I do want to try a variant where we will only have 3 Astartes going up against waves of Tyranids. And for that, the normal activation system is going to be a bit awkward if we're doing 3 versus 20. The solution here is going to be giving that lowest tier of MPOs the group activation clause, so they will be activating in pairs. Going back to that Chaos Devotee example, they are very, very similar to the MPO Trooper profile, and hopefully that will balance things out. We're not going to have those random elements, but the back and forth at least will be a little bit easier. I think we can tweak the current activation system a little. So it starts by looking for an MPO who can fight or shoot. I believe the idea is here that they would be able to fight or shoot as part of their full activation, so both actions, or possibly 3, not necessarily their first action. Now, in one of the videos, I think Ash from GMG misread it during one of his games, so let's just rephrase that just to make that clear. If you have more than one MPO who could get an attack in, then the tiebreaker is to pick whoever's the most threatening, which honestly I think is a bit of a cop-out. We don't want players having to do calculations or math trying to work out who's going to do the most average damage. So let's change that up. Instead, let's activate the MPO who can target an operative on the lowest wounds first. If it's a tie, go with the highest starting wounds of the MPO. So that will mean our heavies will activate before troopers if they're able to go for the same target. If they're still a tie after that, just randomly decide with a dice. Now, that's if they can perform the fight or shoot action. So let's go back up again. If no one can, the next step is to look for an MPO who's not in cover from the player operatives. That makes sense. We want to get them into cover to avoid getting hit. Again, we don't have to have any real tie breaks on that, but if we needed to, we could use the clause of whoever is closer, because if they're closer, in theory they're more likely to get shot or stabbed or whatever. Then if everyone is in cover already, so we're good, and that'll probably be how a lot of the game will start, we can activate the operatives closer. The current version is to activate operatives closest to the player operatives, but I've changed that here to 2 operatives who are actually further away. because I think if you have operatives close, you want to leave them waiting. So, there might be an opportunity to activate them to shoot when the player operatives start getting closer. And then, and if we have tiebreakers on that, we're just going to start with the lowest wounds. And again, if that doesn't decide tiebreakers, you can just randomly roll it out of the ones there. So my updated version here is a little clunkier, but I think it should make sense when we're playing it, and it should make it a little bit easier. We don't have to do any particular math to calculate things. Okay, what do we have here? Oh yeah, okay, so this is when we're attacking. So again, this is it's a similar situation. Before we were picking which MPO was going to be activating, but now we're trying to work out what their target is going to be. So this is for shooting. So it'll look for targets not obscured and then not in cover. So that makes sense. Then it's looking for a target controlling an objective. Then after that, the closest, then anything wounded, and then anything ready. So there's a good selection of things. It's a bit weird having a wounded clause in there and then ready after closest. As really there should only be one operative who is closest, even if that's just by a few millimeters. So, okay, I'm tempted to kind of mess around with those clauses. And we also need to clarify wounded. In Kill Team, wounded is a state where you've taken at least 1 point of damage, which I don't think is particularly useful. Okay, so here's a new version. So rather than using wounded, we're instead looking for a fighter with the lowest remaining wounds. That way, the MPOs will play what my group calls good Titan. So they're going to focus their fire. They're going to try kill operatives. What else have we got? Yeah, the fight actions actually can be quite similar, and this does mix up the fight actions a little bit. There are the priorities for the fight actions. So, with the changes we've made to shooting targets, if we're in a fight, so if we're in melee, then the first two are obviously not going to be an issue. There's no target not obscured and not in cover. We can just get past those because there's not a decision to make between those. So then next one is the target has an objective marker within its control range. So this one's a little bit higher than it was before, but it makes sense to me. And then the target with the lowest remaining wounds, again, that makes sense. And then the last one is we got all tiebreakers. It's whichever is ready. And again, if you've managed to make it past 5 and you still have decisions to make, just roll a dice and that'll settle your tiebreaker. So the idea here is to remove as much choice for the player when they're activating the MPO as possible. So the MPOs can do stupid things, but the rules have told the player to let them do those stupid things, rather than forcing the player into a position where they have to make obscure choices and kind of feel bad because, did I make the right choice? Did I make just things easier for myself rather than playing a good game? All right. Next up, we had talked about rolling for initiative. Another place where you're going to be double rolling is when attacking. So the MPO as a defender is going to be rolling 3 dice in defense. Now, to speed things up, the suggestion is to roll the defending dice along with the attack dice, but have them as a different color. And we'll be doing that the reverse as well. When the MPOs are attacking the other side, then they're going to be, there's going to be dice rolled on both sides. So in this case, we're attacking with the Auto Bolter with Space Marine. So you roll 7 dice in total. So you roll 4 for the attack and then another 3, making sure you have a clear different color for it for the defender. When it comes to the MPOs, attacking back, again, exact same. And, you just work out the result at the end. In theory, we could assign a fixed roll for each save. So here, rather than rolling 3 dice and trying to get 5s, I think it was, we're just going to assume they get 1 save. And they always have 1 save. Every time. The numbers aren't exactly right. So, with the 5+, we can give the troopers 1 save every time. The 4+ for the warriors, which is the next rank up, we can give them a single crit save. So they roll 3 dice looking for 4+. And then the heavies are rolling 3 dice looking for 3+. So we can give them 2 saves. Again, it's not quite right, but we need to give them some numbers to work with. And we're just not going to roll for them at their side. If they were in cover, what would happen was they'd be retaining a dice. So rather than rolling 3, they'd roll 2, and then that extra 1 would count as an auto success. We will just give them an auto success. So if this particular Termagant is behind some cover, what we'll do is we'll give them 2 automatic saves, and then that just makes it nice and simple. Not exactly the exact numbers for what you get in a normal game of Kill Team, but it'll make it fast, it'll make it quick, um, and importantly, we are going to be playing the operative, the player side, out correctly. Now, if we wanted to expand this idea out fully, we can do the same for the attacks. So rather than having 4 dice and then looking for 4+ to hit, doing 2-3 damage on the marksman trooper, it's always going to do 2 normal hits, and each of those hits is going to do 2 damage each time they shoot. Then it's up to the players to roll their save against that roll. Now, this is a big win from a modern game design perspective. It simplifies the MPO side, it keeps all the rolls on the player side. So if the MPO is attacking, they're rolling the 3 dice to save. If they're attacking, they're rolling their attack dice. So it's always, the rolls are always coming from the players. Now, there is a strong argument to not do this, to try keep the game as close to Kill Team as possible. And the argument is if we take too much away, we might lose a lot of the game. I think this is okay though. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I am going to go with this approach. So as you can see, I've gone through the 3 profiles here, and I've gone through all 6 in total. I've worked out some fixed rolls for them. Now, most of the attacks are 4 dice hitting on 4+, which average out to about 2 normal hits. The heavy has a 3+ profile, so we can make it 3 hits. It's not, the numbers aren't quite right, and we have taken away crits here. Now, I'm not too worried about the crits because the crits typically were just a single difference in damage. We do need to factor in cover, and when we factor in cover, we're just going to reduce one of those automatic hits by 1, which again doesn't quite work for the math, but it really simplifies things, keeps the action flowing, keeps things going. We are importantly keeping the player side exactly as is. So someone brand new learning the game will be doing everything they'll normally be doing in a Kill Team game, even if the other side, the MPO side, is simplified. I feel this is a decent compromise. Hopefully it should speed things up, and we can focus the action on the player's dice rather than worrying about both sides. With that in mind, if we are going to go with the fixed attacks and fixed saves for the MPOs, we need to look at the brawler profiles a little bit more. They all have ceaseless, which means they can re-roll dice with the same value. So if you roll 4 dice, and you roll a 1, a 2, a 2, and a 6, you should obviously choose to re-roll those 2 2s. I mean, you could re-roll the 1, or you could re-roll the 6, but obviously you should be rolling 2 2s. And for the most part, a lot of the time it's going to be really obvious what you need to roll. But if you're having to constantly pick up dice and roll an extra one, that just slows things down. That is an extra roll on top of what you already have. That is kind of a key part of Kill Team, the manipulation of the dice, but largely that should be happening on the player side. I don't really feel it makes sense to kind of slow things down to modify things with the MPOs. So instead, if you were going to be rolling dice and you want to keep doing that, my recommendation would be just remove ceaseless and give them an extra dice to roll. That will actually mirror the averages that would happen the majority of the time. So typically you'll have 1 miss that you'll re-roll, and it'll either hit or it won't. So there actually won't be much of a difference replacing ceaseless with a single dice for the majority of times. With the static approach here, all I've done is just add an extra auto hit, which is actually quite good. But we're sticking at averages here, and we kind of know what we're getting. A secondary consideration for the brawlers is how they plan out their strikes and parries. Again, the system in the book just expects you to play the best option for both sides. So much so that it doesn't even mention strikes and parries, unfortunately. That actually can be a little bit head-wrecking because you have to go through all the options. Should I strike? Should I parry? Should they strike? Should they parry? The easy fix is just to have the MPOs always strike regardless. They aren't there to think, just kill. And then we can have the players focus on just their side, working out whether they should parry or strike. I mean, they will know that the MPOs are going to be striking all the time, but we can just, assume that they're dumb players. And because they'll understand from their side, they'll actually have a good idea once they're actually playing real players. So yes, so I've got all my pages here, all my profiles here. I'm quite happy with them. This is how I'm going to play them out. We'll see if it is, if my profiles are a bit too harsh on myself or too easy on myself. But I'm going to be playing it out with myself or whatever buddy I drag into. So I'm not going to be screwing anyone else over. It's not like I'm being unfair, and I'll have an opportunity to tweak as I play a little bit further. So we have talked about MPO selection when activating. Part of that actually factors in what they're going to be doing during the turn during the activate. So we have a different behavior system for the brawler and the marksman, and potentially we could see additional MPOs in future, like commanders, for example. Now, largely these behavior tables are solid, I think, but the reposition option is a little bit basic. So we just move towards the nearest player operative. So what if the MPO is standing on an objective? Time to move off the objective, I guess. Defending a door, time to open that door and move towards the operatives. Now, I don't necessarily have a solution for that. This might be the sort of thing that you incorporate into a mission rule. E.g., on a mission, you'll just say that MPOs that start on objectives won't leave their position. That way, you know what they're going to do, and you can have the other players just stick with these normal basic behavior ones where they will actually leave and they will actually move towards the operatives. We also have a bit of a weird element here, at least I think so, where the MPOs always know where the nearest player operative is, even if they're concealed behind layers of rockcrete. Now, as players looking at it, we do have visibility of the entire battle, and it is just kind of taken that both players know where everyone is, even if none of the team can see it. But playing the game, playing against the AI, as it were, I think it's a little bit strange how the MPO knows where everyone is, despite everyone being concealed. This actually opens up an interesting element for some missions, which I think would be great for a kill team. Stealth missions. So this comes from Necromunda, which has sneak attack rules for some special scenarios. Typically, what you'll have is one of the team, the defender, will have a limited number of models on the board who are the sentries. Now, they just wander around until they eventually spot an enemy. Then they raise the alarm and call for backup. This isn't solo play, though. The sentries are controlled by an actual player. So although they can only move, they will actively be trying to get in a position where they can spot an attacker. To use this in kill team as solo play rules, we will have to work out some way of doing this. So potentially we could give the sentries a path to follow, so they'll always loop in a specific way. We could limit their actions to a single 3-inch dash each activation. They're just walking along, they're just patrolling. And then one thing I think we should do for that is I think we can randomize their activations. So players will activate their operative, and then we'll randomly roll, and then one of the sentries will then move 3 inches along their path. We'll go back to the player operatives, they'll take their actions, and then we'll randomly pick we'll randomly roll to work out which sentry is going to activate. And if we have the same sentry activating over and over and over again, that's great. It'll actually add a little bit of tension, I think, to the player operation, because if they're trying to sneak around, they might be trying to make sure a sentry turns a corner so they can quietly sneak behind them and not get spotted. For a lot of the MPOs, we don't actually need to do anything, which is nice. They can just sit and wait until the action kicks in. So we could have multiple back-to-back turns, but only really the hero operatives moving into position and getting ready, and then some sentries. There's also some Necromunda rules about making spot checks, but we can ignore those in Kill Team, as there is already an excellent stealth system with the Engage, Conceal order system. So the MPOs will only spot an enemy if they're able to basically shoot a player operative. That means the target must be visible with an Engage order, or if it has a Conceal order, then it must be visible and without any cover. If at the end of a turning point, an MPO can see a player operative or has taken wounds and is not yet taken out of action, then they'll raise the alarm. The alarm will also be raised at the end of a turn where a non-silent firearm has been used. So the operatives will be able to sneak in, move around, kill sentries with silent weapons and melee, but they'll need to get them down in a single turn. So they'll need to get that kind of surprise attack in to kill that sentry. Once an alarm has been raised, MPOs will activate normally, and then the game can continue. All right, let's talk about the damage. So I've talked around missions a lot, and strictly that isn't something that we're changing, as extra mission rules like pre-deciding MPO profiles, randomizing deployment, and those stealth mission rules we just talked about could all be produced by GW as part of a mission pack. I think there's a lot of scope for that, and fingers crossed we do actually see some fun missions in White Dwarf, or even better as PDF downloads from our community. I've also meddled a little with the MPO selection and the activation rule because I wasn't quite happy with the approach being taken. But those are relatively minor tweaks. Although I will say I do believe that changing wounded to as a target selection to lowest remaining wounds is an important one and may actually be what the players intended. Now, the switching the MPO roles to static roles is probably the most controversial suggestion I've made in this video so far. It does quite mess with the core rules. Players will obviously be making their own rules, so the outcome isn't completely static and set in stone. But it definitely alters the range. So we aren't going to have those extreme situations where the MPOs get all crits or fails, and then the players can the player operatives could get all crits or fails depending how it goes. So double rolling is still going to be an option if that's something that if the static values are a deal breaker for you. Um, Importantly, I do think those static MPO values do still retain the full rules for the player. So the player isn't changing anything from what they normally would. It's just that the rules that the dice that they're facing off against aren't being rolled. So I do think that is important because they're still playing all the same rules. They are going to learn all the right lessons, and they aren't going to be learning any bad habits. Luckily, as I said, this is all solo and co-op play. So if we have the MPOs too powerful or too weak, then we're not, putting anyone else out. The goal of this format is just to have a good time. And while I've clearly taken this way too seriously, my intention here is just to have the most fun game I can for myself and whoever I can rope into playing this with me. So my objective over the next month or two is to get myself first a bunch of Tyrannus painted. So I'm just after today finishing assembling some Termagants to go with a bunch of Hormagaunts. And then I've got a few of the other models that I picked up from the Combat Patrol magazine. So it looks like I have enough. I have a box of Space Marines. I think what I'll end up doing is I'll probably play up one of the solo missions to test out all of this with some of my Black Templars. But yeah, I have already been eyeing up parts, so I can try together, put 3 Ultramarines together, and try get Titus and his team, and then just have 3 Ultramarines going up against wave after wave of Tyranids. If I will update on that, if I manage to work out a fun scenario and have a good time, I'll make sure to let you all know about it. So please throw me some comments. Tell me what you think. Are any of these suggestions too far? Is there anything here that I've missed out that you think could be added that could improve things? Are there any of the numbers that I picked that you feel are off? Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Yeah, please do add a comment, like, subscribe, all of those things. Thank you very much for listening, and yeah, have a great week. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week, I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.